In a society where we learn that our fear response is anxiety or depression or a extreme emotional state, we kind of either forget or we're not taught what is underneath the fear response in the first place. Like, why has my body gone into this response? So this is what I'm going to speak into today, and then also give you a tool, intuitive tool, to shift this dynamic for yourself, bring awareness to your process, and take action from a different place. So your fear response is your intuition, and as I said, we've been taught to suppress our fear response. This is common with uh, anti-depression pills and any sort of pill that suppresses the nervous system. I'm not against medication. I think that they definitely have their place, and it definitely can be resourceful to have medication. And I also believe that adding holistic approach to it will benefit your life. So if the anxiety has hit a level where you're not able to function in your life, where you can't go to work or you can't do your everyday things, absolutely medication will be supportive for that process and to bring you back into functioning in society. And then once you're in that space, what you can do is then bring into your everyday life activities that can regulate your nervous system and bring calmness, groundedness to you. So then you're not reliant on the medication alone, and you start to create habits and life activities that are really supporting your health and nervous system. So combining all of that as well as medication is what helps if you're taking medication. So, what if we started to explore the reason why you have those symptoms in the first place? Now, you might go to a doctor and you say, look, I'm feeling really anxious or depressed. And depending on the doctor, will depend on what outcome you get. So, for me personally, it was probably about 10, 15 years ago now. I went to I was having like a quarter life crisis. I was in environmental science. I was in a relationship that I wasn't happy with, and I felt more and more depressed. And I'm someone that's quite out there. I've got a lot of energy. I'm a sort of go getter. Like, if I have a goal and clarity, I'll go for it. I've got the energy to do it. But I was starting to feel really anxious and depressed. So I was feeling both these experiences and symptoms. And I was realizing I was getting worse and worse. And my outlook on life was becoming really negative. I was finding that I was constantly complaining, but not in a way that was resourceful, like not in a way that was venting and then finding a solution to it. It was more just like feeling down in the dumps, feeling stuck, complaining about people, complaining about my life. And I ended up speaking to some friends, and they said, oh, well, why don't you go to the doctors and get some anti-depression medication or anti-anxiety medication? This is what I'm taking. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's a good idea, maybe that's what I need. And so I didn't know about holistic counseling, holistic health, anything like that. So I went to a doctor with a counseling background. So I specifically chose her because I thought to myself, if I go to a doctor, I want her to know how to address anxiety and depression. So she had a counseling background as well. And then I got there and she said, oh, how can I help you? And I was like, I'm feeling more and more anxious and depressed, and it's not who I am. It's not the sort of personality I have usually. And she said, and I said, I would like to get some medication. And she said to me, so are you happy in your job? And I said, no, I'm not happy in my job. And she said, are you happy at home? And I said, well, no, my partner and I always fight. We're always fighting. And she said, well, I'm not going to give you medication if those two things in your life are not going well. And I thought to myself, there was this big part of me that was so relieved, because I was like, oh, so you're telling me that if I change aspects of my life, like people I'm around, my environment, my career, which is what I wanted to do anyway, that will improve my anxiety and depression. And that's what she was saying. So there was this hope of like, oh, I don't need to just go on medication and then accept my life as it is. I can make changes that will improve my mood, that will improve where I'm at. And that just gave me this huge sense of relief. There was this relief. And then after the relief, I was like, okay, then what do I do next? Where do I go? Like, I don't even know what my purpose is. I don't know what career I want to be in. I'm at a complete crossroads. So I felt really stuck, and she was helping me navigate that, but she didn't have the tools to help me. All she knew is she explained to me what trauma was, and she also explained to me that, yeah, my environment and the people I have around me are really impacting my nervous system and my anxiety and depression. So this is what led me to move towards holistic process. It was a big process in between because this was like 15 years ago. So there's a lot that has happened in between there. So trauma makes us very sensitive to everyday stresses as well. So what does this mean? If you've had a traumatizing experience, or if you've grown up with trauma, a dysfunctional household, and constant sort of behavior that's stressful for a child, you'll grow up with a nervous system that's quite hypervigilant and is constantly looking for cues of danger. So your nervous system will be more sensitive to someone who grew up in a healthy household. Now, as much as this can really suck and we can really be upset with, our parents and caregivers about this, the thing that we really need to honor here is that we have to then take care of our nervous system in a different way to what it was taken care of when we were younger. So we have to shift our environment and the people we have in it to honor our nervous system. Because what we had to do when we were young, or when we've gone through a traumatic experience, we've had to bring in coping mechanisms to protect us. And as adults, if we want to thrive, we no longer need those coping mechanisms. What we need are healthy relationships, healthy environments, healthy habits, and those different things to improve our health. Trauma, however, it not only makes our nervous system sensitive, it also creates belief systems that tell us we don't deserve those healthy things. It's almost like and this is why it's so, when people say just get over it, just think positive thoughts, just have a goal and go for it. You're letting your fear get in your way, smash through your fear. The privilege that people have who say that are probably the fact that they didn't have the same trauma as you, and they don't have activations around the very thing that you're working towards. Like an example of this is, I know that my gym, the gym owners and the gym I go to, the instructors there, they've always, growing up, that the value in the household was health and fitness. So these two specific instructors that I'm thinking of. So their ability to relate and to empathize with someone who hasn't had that in their life and maybe grew up in a household where food was used as a reward, or maybe food was scarce and only junk food was given. Then also the parenting style, maybe they put down the child for eating a certain way. So like there's all these things that are layered onto it. So for me to go to, say, if I had that experience and I was going to the gym, my fear is going to come up. So I'm going to have a fear response, and I'm going to be stepping out of my comfort zone, and it's going to feel scary because of my past. So this is how trauma can impact us and bring on the fear response when we are trying new things that feel scary. Whereas a fitness instructor, it might be just their norm. They might have grown up with sports and been encouraged in that area and positivity in that area, so that all they know is a really encouraging and nurturing space there. So it's when you find a fitness instructor that can resonate with all those other things, I feel like that would be really beneficial for someone who's had trauma in that area. So how is this our intuition? I'll come back to that. So how is our fear response our intuition? Whenever our fear response comes online, so if I get a activation of something scared me, so I've got an activation and worry comes on. Say the worry is a fear response. It can be more subtle than an adrenaline rush when we get like that huge hit of adrenaline, maybe just before we go public speaking. That they're two a bit different. But let's say we get one of those things. The way so that fear response is telling us information. I'm going to go to it. I'm going to skip this one. It's telling us that there's a cue of danger. It doesn't mean, then the meaning that we put on it is not necessarily the accuracy of that. But what is actually happening is it's signaling that there is something either internally that we feel unsafe about, or externally. So if I have a fear response, that's my intuition. That's my sensory system going, hey, there's something dangerous. This could be a belief I have internally. So say if I'm in a safe environment and no one else is around, and I all of a sudden get this fear response come in. This could be because I had a thought of maybe a memory flash. I had a flashback. I could have had a flashback. It brought in something for me that caused a fear response in my being. That's an internal experience that I'm having. It's not necessarily my environment, but it could be because I slowed down and I have no one else around me, so this memory popped up. That's just an example of an internal experience. Then the external danger could be, say if I'm meeting someone new in a new environment and I get activated. So I get this fear response come into my system and I feel worried or anxious. That is telling me that, so this person, there's something possibly in this person, the quality in them that makes me feel unsafe. It could be conditioned response, so an association with a past person that has made me feel unsafe and they share a similar quality. It can even be a similar smell. Our sensory systems come in. It could be a similar, like a cologne that they wear. It could be the way they talk, the way they walk. So it's not necessarily that that person is dangerous. It can be. It absolutely can be that. It can also be that there's something we're associating with that person. This is why listening to our fear and really slowing things down is so crucial, because we want to know, what is it? Like, if that person is dangerous, we kind of want to know that. If the environment's dangerous, we want to know that. So that's why your intuition is your fear. It's the meaning that we put on it. So let's say my intuition comes in, my activation happens, and I meet this new person, I become activated, and I say to myself, oh, that just must be my own thing. I must be just, maybe I'm just nervous because they're older than me or they're smarter than me. It's just something that it must be me. When we do that, we're dismissing information that could be really crucial. That's when we're actually going, you know what? If we stopped and just went in and went, what is it about this person? What am I noticing in this person that's not quite right? You might find information where it's like they are a dangerous person. And when I say dangerous, it can be emotionally not connected. So they might be dismissive, avoidant, denial, fantasy, that sort of thing. So they're someone that's not present, rooted in reality. It could be that they're physically actually dangerous, like they're a dangerous person. And then the other one where it's just an association. So they're not necessarily a dangerous person, but some qualities that they express makes us feel a little unsafe. So there's a different way of doing that. I'll come back to that. So coming to window of tolerance, I want to come back to trauma response, because this is really important. When we've had trauma, so window of tolerance is our ability to be grounded in stress. So it doesn't mean we don't get stress and, we don't feel ungrounded, if that's even a word, I'm not sure. But it's more in the middle here of this window that I have. We go through ups and downs during our day. We might be driving and someone cuts us off, so we get a bit stressed out, but it doesn't put us outside the window of tolerance. maybe we're trying something new. Like, even Sophia, you've just moved homes. This could have really got you close to coming out of the window of tolerance just because of the stress of moving homes. Like, that's very normal, and that can happen. Sometimes we can feel anxiety, fear, panic, and that sort of thing. And then we come back down into a calm state. When we've had trauma, though, our ability to withstand stress reduces because we bring in coping mechanisms, because we're so dysregulated from our past experiences or the trauma that was created. It causes a dysregulation in our nervous system. So we're looking for relief. This is why people with addiction have addiction. It's not because they want to be addicted to these things. It's not because they have choices around, like, they do have choices, but generally what's happening is their nervous system so dysregulated from past experiences that they're trying to ease that within themselves. So the coping mechanism is addiction, or we all have coping mechanisms. Mine was relationships, and food. Others can be shopping. It can be so many different things that are our coping mechanism. It can be online, being social media, but the things that I would be looking at with my coping mechanism is the ones that have high consequences to them. So a coping mechanism generally has a pretty big consequence when we do it. So we'll have a hit of dopamine to give us a relief, and then it doesn't actually widen our window of tolerance. I'll come back to that. So you've got on the right, I've got this little window of tolerance here. So let's say this is if you've had trauma, your ability to stay within the window of tolerance reduces. And what happens is you can go into hyperarousal, which is anger outbursts, fear, anxiety, emotional overwhelm, panic, hypervigilance, tight muscles, deer in a headlight freeze. Or you can, once you've been up here for so long, you then drop down to hypoarousal, which is depression, numbness, emptiness. There's got a facet body there as well. So you feel really heavy. There's a real heaviness, blank stare, inability to speak, and disassociation. So these are the extreme ends of when we are outside the ability to regulate our nervous system. We're kind of we're offline at this point in time. We can't use our part of our brain that is like analytical, logical, solution based. Our thinking is offline, and we're in our primitive brain, our emotional part of our brain. So what does this have to do with intuition? It's for us to know that part of our intuition, to be able to read our intuition, we need to widen our window of tolerance of stress. So, and I'll go into that. So what have we got here? So I just wanted to speak into internal and external examples of when our intuition is activated. So when the fear response is activated, so we're trying something new, not knowing what to expect, we can feel worried, anxious, nervous, and excited. So that's the internal experience that we're having about something that we're about to do. Making a decision to change careers, build a business, commit to a relationship by moving in with someone, or any decision that will significantly impact your life. Stepping out of your comfort zone, and flashbacks. These are more of like an internal fear. So this is more internally happening with us. This is why I always stop when I have a fear response. Is it something within me that's happening, or is it my external environment and experience? And then we've got the external environment, meeting someone new and feeling fear in your body. So feeling activated, being in a relationship, career, or environment that is activating your stress response. The way you know this is when you start to leave that environment. So I have an example of this is when I left a workplace that was highly stressful. When I was in it, I couldn't sleep. So I couldn't sleep. I lacked tolerance for humans in general. Like, I had a really low tolerance. I was hitting burnout. So my body was tense, and there was a lot happening in my body. Like, I would get injured. So all these things were happening. as soon as I left that environment, within like a couple of weeks, I was sleeping better. My body wasn't aching. I liked people again. I had capacity for people. So this is a really good indicator when your environment is actually um, activating that fear response. And extreme sports too. So like if you're standing at the top of a big cliff face and you're about to abseil down, it's pretty obvious that your adrenaline will be going, like have your adrenaline will come online, and you will feel perspiring, like you'll feel like you're going to die because your body's not really used to going down a cliff face like that. So those are just different things. As I said, we can have associations with um, with experiences. So trauma responses and fear responses are generally associations and conditioned response. So something that's happening in our present moment is reminding us of something in the past. This is humans, environments, situations that this can happen in. So it's a conditioned response where our body can remember it and our mind can forget it, because we can also have repressed stuff around it. Repressed means that it's there, but I forget that it's there until I have a flashback or until I have an activation in my system, so a fear response. So the intuition, when that happens, when we get a flashback or activation, that's your intuition saying, hey, there's something here that needs your attention. So an innate response, our innate fear response, this is what we're born with to survive in the world. So we are born to attach to humans because we're just babies. So that's why we cry, and our parents have to be there for us because we can't survive without them. So innately, we don't learn to cry. We just cry because we know that's going to get us help because we can't speak yet. So that's our innate fear response that comes in, and they're kind of two different things. But I did see recently a little video on little babies that were sitting on the ground, and these people put python snakes next to them to show others that how fear can be associated, like a behavioral thing that we learn, because the babies just like looked at the snakes and just like put their hands on them and were not fearful of them at all. So it's interesting how we learn how to be fearful of stuff. It's kind of like if your mum is scared, or your caregivers are scared of spiders, and then you grow up being scared of spiders too because you watched your mum like screaming while trying to kill a spider or something. It's similar to that. That's the association piece. That's the thing that we learn. Okay, so here I wanted to bring in a just what happens. This is what's happening when you are becoming activated. So I always talk about activation or triggers, same thing. So reacting from our story and past experiences. This is like many of us out in the world, this is how we're functioning until we start to reflect and become aware of our process. The cue is a person, environment, or situation. At work, relationship, in like in wherever it is, like travel, whatever you're doing, that's the cue. So the cue is what we're sensing around us. The activation is the autonomic response. So this is the fear response that comes up automatically without our ability to have any control over it. So this is any sort of fear response that comes up. Then our reaction comes in. Our reaction is coming in from what I just said before, is our associations and conditioning in life. So we don't know, but it's coming in from our past experiences and stories that have created belief systems that we have formed from these past experiences. I'm overreacting. They're fine. It's me. It's their fault. It's my fault. So these are different ways we can just dismiss ourselves. I should be happy with what I have. Why can't I just not care about what is wrong with me? I'll just stay in my comfort zone. So this is us kind of just, we get the activation and then we can dismiss it very easily, thinking there's something wrong with us or with the other person. I did this with a person a while back now. I met them and gave them a hug, and my heart rate increased when I did that, and I felt like an activation in my system of fear activation. And I said to myself, Oh, that must be just my own edge, like my own belief system that's coming in. Like I think there's something kind of wrong with me, is how I did it. Because I was like, oh, I'll go get therapy and see what's happening. So I went to my therapist and I said, I have this activation when I'm around certain men. So it was about men. It's me being vulnerable here. And my therapist said, she's like, why do you want to fix that activation? And I'm like, because I think I have some sort of association with men and maybe I'm just scared of them. And she said to me, are you always scared of men? And I'm like, no, not all men. And she's like, well, I think that activation is actually meant to be there. I think your fear response, and that's, she's like, your fear response is healthy response to someone that might not be safe. And it just like completely dropped for me. I was like, oh my gosh, this whole time. And then when it turned out this person that I did have that fear response to was actually, in fact, very emotionally unsafe and continues to be unsafe. So my intuition was trying to tell me through my fear response that they were not safe. And I had dismissed it because of my past experiences. Now I know that that's a signal for me, and I've analyzed it because that's what I do, and I've gone down deep around what that is. It's a signal for me around an emotional safety thing where they're not emotionally safe for me. And the fear response is actually a healthy response for us to have. Some people have repressed fear responses. And this is where the common theme, and this is just my hypothesis, is that you can have health symptoms that can be quite common where you have a lot of health symptoms, immune shutdown system stuff happening if you've repressed your fear response, because you can also not feel fear around certain people because it's so repressed. So this is why when people say to me, I feel fear, I'm like, that's good because it's actually working. Your fear response and your intuition is online. Fantastic. Let's see what it's telling us. So a lot of people can, so after the reaction can go into coping mechanisms. So we cover up, which is what I did. I just blamed myself and went to fix myself. So that was covering up what my intuition was actually telling me. There's other ways. So we can go into addiction, coping mechanisms, do whatever gives us a hit of safety, of dopamine as well. Fawn response, so we can go into blame, fawn, deny, push away, fix it, work harder or don't work, and procrastinate. So we can get activations and then go into our coping. So coping mechanisms are a fawn response is blaming others, denying, pushing away things, avoiding. These are all coping mechanisms that we've learned to have. Working harder or don't work at all, so procrastinate. For me, my coping mechanism in the past was fix it, so work harder. That's what I learned from my parents, and it was passed down to me. So we don't know we're doing this until we become aware too. So it's important not to be hard on ourselves with it either. So the new way, oh, I've made a spelling mistake. I've probably made many throughout this. To honor your activations. So this is, I've shared my stories around why now I honor my activations. And the new thing that you can do is you've got the cue. So you've got the person, environment, situation. You've got the activation. This happens automatically. So there's nothing we can do about the activation when it happens. It's going to happen automatically. The thing about an activation is what we do after it. So you then check in. Okay, so this is the new step. I'm activated. Name it. I'm activated. I feel something has shifted in my being. This can include feeling numb. That's an activation in itself. So then we name it. I'm activated. What do I notice in myself? What do I notice in other people around me and my environment? So this is all facts. What am I noticing? What is the story or flashback that's coming in? So you just ask yourself that. It's even just slowing down to ask yourself these things. These are things that can be really beneficial. What is the emotion underneath? The way that I access my emotion, if it's something that I in the past found hard to do, I'd start with the sensation. What's the sensation I'm feeling? Numbness can still be a sensation. It can be, I feel hot. I feel tension in my chest and in my stomach. So just really just naming what you notice, how you feel, and then you can go into, well, what's the emotion under there? Oh, I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling angry. So understanding what's really happening, so then you can respond with that awareness. Breathe and ground. So then respond in action, new way of being. This is where therapy comes in. And I know I harp on about therapy, that this is why, because the new way of being is a practice as well. So it's having boundaries, it's changing like your environment. So I often say to my friend, therapy is definitely not for people who want to stay in the same, not environment, because the environment can be safe. It can be like it's just in the same way of living, because these things, like I need to bring in boundaries. I need to bring in new habits. I need to start meeting my needs, being present with myself and slowing down to be able to really honor my intuition. This is the hardest thing that we do because it's a different way of being. In the past, the coping mechanism has suppressed the intuition and the information it's had. Now it's like a new perspective of life. It's a new way of being. That's where therapy comes in, and processing trauma or past negative experiences, so you can identify, what are my needs? What are the habits that would really support me as an individual? What are my boundaries as an individual? I'll have different boundaries to my friend, my partner. We're all different in that space. Presence, how can I be present with myself? We can't reframe things that are stored in the body. So there'll be times where you can reframe and use that as it will be helpful. But if you don't know what your needs are, what the activation's telling you, what's the intuition, it's really difficult to reframe, because we're still just, reframing can be used as covering up. So reframing is a way of positive thinking, and that can work once you know all the information of your fear response. Once you have that information, you can then use reframing to soothe yourself and regulate again. But it's really important to get the inner wisdom to the fear response first. So that's where I talk about widening your window of tolerance. It's sitting and holding the tension that we haven't held before. So when we're changing habits, when we're changing the way that we're responding to our nervous system, we're no longer getting the quick hit, the coping mechanism, we're not using the coping mechanism, we're widening our ability to deal with stress. Now, this is probably one of the hardest things that we do in life, is the ability to sit in the discomfort and the tension of not fixing it straight away. Sitting in the discomfort of and not feeling regulated, and being able to sit in that, meet, and also getting support and resources to stay in that. I call it riding the wave, because it will not always stay for long. So often we feel when we're in a depressive state, or when we're feeling really anxious and worried, it feels like we're going to feel that way forever. The really good thing about sitting in your emotions is that you won't feel it forever. So sometimes even having a really good sleep can shift your mood, or having a list of resources when you're feeling down and depressed, or when you're feeling anxious, having a list of resources for each one of those things. So then, rather than using coping mechanisms, you're using healthy ways to regulate yourself and widen your window of tolerance. So I've got here holding the tension and riding the wave. Resources, so that's where you can write a list of resources that support you to hold the tension when you are changing habits, when you are moving away from coping mechanisms. We've always got to, when we have a coping mechanism, it's meeting a need. until we become aware of the need, we're going to be meeting it in a kind of unaware way. So as soon as you do the reflection piece on, why do I have this coping mechanism? Identify the need. Once you've identified the need, then you can start to meet it more directly in healthy ways. So bringing in that need, because we don't want to get rid of a coping mechanism and be like, you're all on your own. You have no other thing to support you. We need to bring in something that will help regulate your nervous system that meets a need. So I've got supporting your nervous system and honoring its fragility. When we are in this space, we can feel fragile and vulnerable. So really supporting your nervous system through that. The way that I do this for myself personally is I started my own business. I work for myself so I can go to the gym, pick my hours. This is something that's been a kind of like a project in progress. Like I've been working towards this for a long time. But what I knew that is if I could work for myself, I could really meet my needs and support my nervous system so I can be growing and evolving in what I do. This will be different for everyone. And it's also, I got here through stepping stones as well. So that is it. I would love to hear your insights, any questions. I know that it was a long one because I shared many of my stories.
I think that was so amazing.
Oh, good. What did you find amazing, Sophia?
Oh, everything that you said, like most of the things that you said, I feel like I can relate to.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Trauma, and the fear response that is linked to that, and then how we respond and kind of react after those things have come through.
Yes.
For me, though, it's like slowing down is a struggle, slowing down enough to actually unpack it.
Yes.
And that's where I'm like, if something happens and then I try and slow down and unpack it, my mind will speed me up to get it over
Ah,
and done with. And then it's like, how do you know when it's been processed or not?
good
Like,
question.
yeah, an example. I could
Yep.
give you an example.
Yeah.
Last week I had a message pop up on my phone from one of my sisters. And this is a sister that has like caused a lot of drama in the family before. And I had this whole physiological response, like just this anxiety run through my body, and it just continued on and on and on, and I was so fearful, and I tried to like talk myself through what was going on, but then I think I must have just put it aside and thought, okay, yeah, I dealt with that, but I don't think that I have.
Great example. Great example. And I'm sorry that you felt that way when you got that, because I that physiological response can really make us feel vulnerable and scared. Like it takes over the system, right?
Yeah.
The way that you know whether you've dealt with something or not or processed it is when so say an example is like when your sister messages again, do you have a physiological response again? If so, then it's still there. It if it cycles as well, like even when you're talking about your sister or you think about your sister, what comes up in your body?
I feel like
Yeah.
I feel kind of like nervy inside of me.
Yes. Yes. So that's information to be like, okay, but I it requires me to sit and go deeper into that space. This is like where therapy tools come in to go into that space, um, and to check in, which I can show you in a session actually, just how to do that.
That would be good, yeah, because I feel like I know what I should be doing, but then the doing part I don't think it really, I complete it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sometimes we feel safer to complete it with another person.
Yeah. I
And
think that's why I feel like I get so much out of my therapy is because,
yeah,
yeah, I'm witnessed in it.
yes, yes.
And
That's
it's
the relational part to the therapy, is that that's the healing part too, is that if you didn't
just
have
like
that,
I wasn't like I felt like I wasn't seen or heard as a small child. That's
mm,
why I get so much out of that.
yes,
Mm.
yeah, this is the healing in the relational therapy
Mhm.
relationship. So knowing that, having a healthy way to nurture yourself through that space, because it's something that wasn't there when you were younger,
Yeah.
because your mum obviously didn't have the tools and all whatever come up for her in her experience. It's, yeah, because of that. So that's why this is why I do relational therapy, because of that exact reason, is to be able to go, okay, let's nurture you in this space, because that's what it needs. It really needs like honoring and nurturing.
Yeah. Yeah. You certainly provide that. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Oh, I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear.
I
Glenn, yeah,
can I just say one more thing?
yeah.
Like, what if you can't pinpoint exactly where it's come from?
Mm.
Like the response.
So I that's why I work with emotions as well. So our memory, and this is taught in I think at first year psychology they teach it about our memory reconstructs things, but it's not accurate. But what is accurate is our emotional state. So that's why I'm often bringing people back to the body, because I know that we can't rely on the memory itself, but we can rely on, when you're kind of talking about something, what's happening in the body. And then we can process that. And that's where you can get resolve and a release, because it's really feeling into, okay, the body is what remembers. The mind kind of has an idea, but it will try to put meaning to things, and it will try to reconstruct it, and it's not necessarily as accurate.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Velma.
You're welcome, Sophia. Glenda, how are you going?
Yeah, I'm okay. I've got to say, when Sophia, you just said about like not being seen nor heard when you're a child, um, instantly my tummy went.
Oh,
So most of my fear starts in my tummy, and
yes.
it's like that, not the butterfly, but that real nervy sort of type feeling in my tummy. It's
Mhm.
usually mostly from my tummy, and I just it just instantly resonated with me, with my mum, and even my sister for that matter.
Yeah.
You know, I was the wild child, or I was the rebellious child, and goodness knows what. Realistically, all I really wanted was some love and like being heard, and not having to suppress anger, all of those things, so I wouldn't get into trouble and I wouldn't cringe.
Mm,
So that, yeah, fear is a big one for me.
yes. And
Mm,
you're feeling it in your stomach and knowing that, and that, so you can see intuitively where to lean into, right? When you do the work, you're like, oh, okay, my intuition is actually telling me there's some resonance there, and
mm,
yeah,
yeah,
attend to.
definitely. And that's what I'm looking forward to discussing
Yeah,
with you.
yeah, moving into
Yes.
that space. Is there anything that you need in between now and then? Any questions you have about your experience at the moment?
Um, I think just mostly not letting it overwhelm me too much, and just sitting sort of with it, and like, I'm going to explain it. Bit of meditation. I've been finding some different meditations, Joe Dispenza,
Yeah.
just those sort of type of things that will help calm my nervous system. And I don't know whether you've heard of Ryan Rose Evans.
I don't think so.
Okay, he is on Instagram. He does a lot of somatic therapy.
Right. Yep.
So he actually puts up free videos online of your nervous system, like little workouts, qigong, and I've been
Oh,
doing his qigong and stuff like that, and really helps my nervous system. So
beautiful.
yeah, just those things, and yeah, I don't
Great.
know what else really.
Yeah, what were you going to say, Sophia? That's so good, Glenda. Like, great list of things that you do for your nervous system in between.
I was just going to say, what was his name again, Glenda?
Ryan Rose Evans.
Okay.
He's amazing. He had lived experience with drug and alcohol, just a lot of inner like turmoil and stuff, and he just puts these free things up online, which is just helps people, and it's really quite it's great. I really like following him because he's real. And he helps people, even though he has a community and that's his job.
Great.
You know, he's just, yeah, incredible. Yeah.
For that resource, Glenda.
Mm.
Yeah, so coming back to the list and not overwhelming your nervous system, it's exactly what I would suggest, like knowing when stuff comes up. Sometimes we feel like it's there and it can feel overwhelming, or it can feel like our mind will want to go into that space and think about it. So I do actually encourage distracting ourselves from it until we have space to look at it and go into it in therapy, because um, I always like tell my little fragile inner child self, it's okay, we're going to look at it, we're just going to put it aside for now, and we're going to come back to it, and we're, like, just to let it know that we're not suppressing, we're going to come back to it. So
Yeah.
you can use that as well as like having a bit of a dialogue with that part of you that feels that fear that comes up. So but all those activities that you do in between are fantastic as well.
Thank you. It does help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Have you got any other questions, Sophia or Glenda?
No, that was amazing. Thank you,
No,
Thelma.
it was, yes, same. It was amazing. And when I read that it was fear, I thought, oh, this will be interesting.
Yeah.
Very,
Yeah,
yeah. So,
definitely.
yeah.
Our body is incredible tool as well. Like it tells that it's constantly signaling to us information. I did have someone bring in a question around panic attacks. I don't know if either of you have ever had panic attacks, but it's at the top of the window of tolerance. So, when I showed you that window of tolerance, a panic attack is all the way up the top outside the window of tolerance. And that's when all of our kind of ability to think and be present is offline, and we do feel like something's really wrong and we're out of control, and we can feel quite scared in that space. Before a panic attack, there is a lot of signals that are coming in and telling us something, and panic attacks can be a form of, like, we've suppressed the fear along the way, and then it gets to a point where it just bursts, and it's like, okay, I'm going to give you a panic attack now to get you to really sort of pay attention to this. So this is why I always look at the subtleties as well, because within the window of tolerance, you always get these little subtleties. When stress comes in, it will impact us in certain ways. And so that's why I have that little chart at the end about checking in and really reflecting on what is happening in my body at the moment. What am I feeling? Because those check-ins are what really support us to not get to a point of panic or shut down and not, that real depressive state. Our ability to really honor those little signals that come in along the way keep us from going from the highs and lows, like, so we can more have a steady state. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
I think my mechanism is like disassociate, and like I tend to bury it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah.
that's my safe way of actually not sometimes looking at it at the moment, because it's too much.
Yeah, and see how like intelligent the body is being. So I always see that as, okay, that is telling us that you would work in therapy too. Like working slow is so important for you and your nervous system, because that overwhelm will come in if we don't work slow, and it will go into that disassociation state. So we really want to honor that process that you will have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's good to know, like, you've got the awareness, which is fantastic. Having that awareness, even that's huge, that awareness in itself.
Oh, Ray has helped there.
She's good with that.
Yeah. Next you are. That will be so good. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too, me too. Sophia, do you have anything you feel like I could see your thoughts ticking away?
Yeah, always. Make it stop.
I just want to be zen.
No, I don't have anything else to add.
Amazing. Alrighty, thank you so much for joining me. I love it when you come join me and have questions and engage. And I will see both of you at some point. Which will be great. Glenda, I know this week. Sophia, I'll see you soon.
Yep.
Thanks, Val. Bye, Glenda.
See ya. Have a good week.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.